Okay, so we are at the bottom of Daf Samach Tes on the base. Hayoim Arbos Hayoim Shem Shnei Shavuos Loy. So I want to back up a little bit because I was sort of rushing at the end of yesterday because I started late, and because of that, we ran a little bit late. So I want to go back.
Samach Tes on the base?
Samach Ches on the base. I'm sorry.
Tes, okay.
Samach Ches on the base. I want to go back to the brisa that discusses in the case of Iska. So we've been discussing, and that we're going to continue to discuss Iska. Iska is venture capitalism, where two people get together. One person provides the capital, the other person provides the sweat equity. You can call one person the investor, the other person the entrepreneur, the manager. They get together and they do a shutfis where they will split the shutfis. 50% of the money provided will be a pikadon, 50% of the money provided will be a halva, and because of that, the profits are going to be split 50-50. The chelik pikadon, 100% of those profits go to the investor, and the chelik milva, 100% of those profits go to the entrepreneur, to the worker, and the same thing will be with the losses. The cut in half, all of the risk is on the investor. The milva half, all of the risk is on the entrepreneur. Now, this is not a heter iska. This is iska. This is standard business. That's what the Gemara is discussing. There was one technical problem, and that is on the tzad b'kadon, which means on the investor's half, the entrepreneur is running the investment, he's providing the sweat equity, and he's not getting compensated for it. The only compensation we could see here is that he only got this whole loan and got this whole opportunity because he was providing that sweat equity. Which in a sense is he got this loan by providing sweat equity, which is now going to be called ribis derabbanan, because he borrowed money only because he was willing to provide that extra service to the investor to run his side of the investment. So because of that, the Mishnah taught us there has to be some additional payment to the entrepreneur so that will pay him for his services to run the investor side of the investment. Because otherwise, we'll say he's doing it. It'll look like he's doing it to get the loan. So there has to be a payment. The discussion here is how much of a payment is enough. There was a machlekes if it has to be a significant payment, or if it could be something as simple as I'll let you dip your chicken into my ketchup. If it's something as simple as that. So let's start from the Tanu Rabbanon. It's about halfway down on Samach Ches on the base. Tanu Rabbanon. Kama hu schlaroi. How much does this entrepreneur have to get? Bein meruba ubein mu divrei Reb Meir. Reb Meir said you have to establish a deal, but the deal that you make, whatever minimal the amount of payment that you want to pay this entrepreneur will be adequate to tell us that it's not ribis, to alleviate the concern of ribis. But it does have to be established in advance what that payment will be. Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Meir agree on the amount of the payment. What Rabbi Yehuda says is you don't even have to formalize it. You don't even have to make that as part of the deal. Even if they didn't include in the deal for any payment towards the entrepreneur, but they sat down to make a l'chaim, and the investor let the entrepreneur dip his challah into his herring, that's good enough of a payment, even though it wasn't established and formalized, but casually the entrepreneur benefited even a little bit, that will be good enough to alleviate the concern of ribbis. Shimon ben Yochai Omer, he already has to be more significant. And he says, you have to see what this is worth, what this sweat equity that the entrepreneur is putting in, what it's worth, and he has to be paid full properly for that equity. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem for us. Thunder Rabban. In Shoman lo yasi izim lo yasi rechelim v'lo kol davar sheinu oisiv oichel l'mefza. You're not allowed to make a deal where the owner of the animals will give it to a shepherd and tell the shepherd, you're going to do all the work, you're going to raise these animals, and whatever we get out of them, if children, if they grow older, and because of that, if they get stronger, because of that, we could sell them at a profit. Whatever the profit will be, it will be 50-50. That's not allowed. Why is it not allowed? Because, once again, the shepherd's getting this opportunity only because he's willing to provide a free service in operating and running the investment. The shepherd would have to be paid separately for his work towards the Chelek HaPikon. Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda Omer, Shamanis Ha'izim, you could do it. You know why? Because there are some fringe benefits that the shepherd is going to get from the animals as he's raising them. And what are those? If they goats give out milk. So as a fringe benefit, he'll be able to get that milk. That will be enough to be a payment towards his work on the Chelek HaPikon. Because he'll be able to, the entrepreneur will be able to take the wool that he shears off of them while he's watching them during that period of time. The shoitvois umartois, and they also, wool falls off of them even when they're not actually being shorn. So there's fringe benefits, literally fringe benefits when it's taking wool off a sheep. And those benefits that are adequate to alleviate the concern of avak ribbis. If it's chickens we're talking about, because yes, the chicken requires effort and feed, but the chicken produces eggs, and we're going to allow the entrepreneur to keep the eggs. Frek the Gemara, v'tanakamo, hizo, v'choloiv, l'sibik, l'sar, moloi, u'mezaynoi. The Tanakama said you're not allowed to do it l'mechzer. It's only Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda who said that this milk and this wool is adequate for the payment. But it's a pretty significant payment. Why would the Tanakama hold that's not an adequate payment? Zokt Gemara, the giza v'cholo kula amaloi pli. If it's the actual giza, the actual milk that the shepherd is going to get, even the Tanakama agrees that's adequate payment. It wouldn't be machzor kiribis. We're discussing here much more subtle payment. The way, the WHEY. So we're not letting the shepherd keep the milk, but we're letting him keep the way. That's a much smaller thing. That's where there's a machlokes, the Tanakama holds it's not significant enough. And Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda holds it's a small amount, it's good enough. And the tusrei is the little fibers that come off the sheep. Those are what we're talking about that we're going to allow the shepherd to keep, but not the actual shearers. So Tanakama Sabalah, Tanakama holds this is not an adequate payment because you have to pay the shepherd normal rates. And if you don't, it's machzor kiribis. And Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda Sabalah Kavua, he holds like his father Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar Afilu loy Tavali Moyel Betzir, Veloy Achal Imoyel Gregris Achas Zeus. Yosy ben Yehuda holds like Rabbi Yehuda who holds you don't even need to formalize any type of payment. As long as the shepherd gains some minimal benefit, that will be enough for us to say that it's not mechzor kiribis and there's no issue. Zok the Gemara weiter. Tanu Rabbanan, maskeres isha lechavita tanagoyles b'shnei afreich. If a woman has a tanagoyles, she's allowed to say, I'm renting it to you to sit on your eggs so that they'll hatch, and I'm charging you a flat rental rate of to a freichen. That's allowed because the renter is paying no matter what, whether or not babies hatch or not. The renter is being mechayiv themselves to pay for the use of those chickens, and that's not something where there's any. It's not a mechse pekadon. It's not mechse milva. It's a full pekadon. It's a full pekadon. All the profit's going to go to the woman who owns the eggs, who is renting the chicken, and she's paying a full rental for the chickens that will not be dependent upon what the product ends up being. However, what you're not allowed to do, is Isha Sha'amar L'Chavita, Hanagoyla Shali. The chickens are mine. Uveitim Shalichi, and the eggs are yours. And let's do a partnership. On the Ivaat, Nachlik Bafreich. So that's already Chatzi Mil V'Chatzi Bikotin. And there's a problem because what extra pay is the woman who owns the chickens? What extra pay does she get for servicing the Chelik Hamilve? Rabbi Yehuda Matir, Rabbi Shimon Oyser. Frank the Gemara, how could Rabbi Yehuda be Matir? Rabbi Yehuda Leiboy Schar Amalei B'Soinai. Where is the woman, the owner of the chickens? Where is she getting compensation for servicing the Chelik Hamilve? So to Gemara, Ika Beit Musarais. Once again, Rabbi Yehuda holds, of course, there has to be some payment. But Rabbi Yehuda L'Shitase holds it could be a very subtle payment. And therefore, the mere fact that if there's going to be any eggs that are not going to mature, that are not going to fertilize, and not going to hatch into a chicken, those eggs will remain with the woman who's the owner of the chickens, and therefore that will be considered her payment. Tana Rabban. Magam shenahagu lahali schar katev lemois lebehema mile, where they would pay extra for a shepherd to do a ma'aseh Moshe Rabbeinu, to carry the little shepselach out to the meadows to graze, to drink, and then carry them in at night. If that was the minute to pay for that, malin you pay, ve'ein mishanin minik abedin. Whatever the normal pay is, that's what has to be done in the case of Iska, so that it shouldn't look like it is ribis. There's a kula here. If the entrepreneur, the shepherd, is not just watching the little shepselach, but also the mother, then no extra payment needs to be given to the shepherd because he's watching the little children. Whatever he's getting to watch the mother is adequate because he doesn't have to carry anything. Automatically, wherever he brings the mother, the little children are going to follow without him having to exert himself extra. So therefore, shaman egel lemimai v'siach emimai v'afil b'makom shenahagu lahalei schar katev l'mois. Even though if you would normally be paying extra here, you wouldn't have to. Right to Gemara, but what pay is the shepherd getting for taking care of the mother? Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, leiboy schar amalim mezoinai. So Gemara, no, about Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, you do need some level of schar and ikaglalim. The manure that the animal produces will be retained by the shepherd, and that's what's going to pay him to take care of the mother. The Idich and the Mandamar hold that you're not going to be shaman egal imoi. In other words, you would have to pay special for the service of the mother. He holds galolim of kurim afkalu. The galolim aren't considered a pay to the shepherd because anyway they're a hefker, and that's not going to be considered a pay, and therefore you're going to have to come up with cash. Amar Rav Nachman, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda, the Halacha of Rabbi Yehuda, the Halacha of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the most minimal payment will be enough. That's number one. The Halacha of Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, we said, says the same thing. Shavar Kavua, he holds like his father, who also says the same thing, that even the smallest little benefit that the children Next, Haribis. The
You must
halacha
be.
of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. The halacha like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, who we quoted concern of Ribs. B'nei Rav Ilish, the children of Rav Ilish. Rav Ilish was actually a very famous Amoira because we had actually had a story with the daughters of stir a pot with their hands. They were literally a cup. And Rav Ilish was that this was legit, that they weren't doing it with Kishif. He was chayshed that it wasn't because they were on such a high madrega. And he ended up getting captured together with the daughters of Reb Nachman. And while he was in captivity, there was a raven that came and spoke, and he asked one of the goyim there, "What is the raven saying?" And the guy said, "The raven is saying that you should escape." Ravila says, "I can't trust the ravens. It's not a kosher bird. I'm not escaping. This could be some type of trap." The next day, a dove came, spoke, and once again, Rav Ilish asked, what's this bird saying?" And the guy said he's saying you should run away. So that's already an iftar. I'm going to trust him. I'm going to run away. Before he ran away, he wanted to ask he wanted to consider helping and saving Reb Nachman's daughters. So he wanted to first see if they were earnest and honest and good people. So the Gemara tells us women in the bathroom, they tend to discuss their very private, intimate secrets. So he went to where the bathroom was to hear them talking to each other. And what they said was, "Oh, yeah, I hope our captors keep us far away so our husbands will never find us. Because we like them. We like them, and we're going to stay with them." So he realized that they weren't so erlich after all, and it was kshafim. So he abandoned them and he ran away. Giveger brings there from a raya from here that the Rabbi Ilish was able to understand the language of the animals, the language of the birds. Perkib Kiveger, Adrabah, spoke Vigert. You see, he needed to ask the Goyim to tell him what the birds were saying. So why in the world would there be a raya from here that he himself understood them? And there's a very famous Reb Chaim Shmulevitz who makes this story with Rabbi Ilish famous. And he said that what you learn from here is think about it. Think about it. He didn't trust a raven. He's going to trust a guy. The teretz is a Ravada of Ilish understood what they were saying. But when you're Naigebedover, when you're extremely biased, like Rav Ilish was, he's dying to get out of captivity, to run away, you sometimes can hear things that aren't being said. So he actually did understand what the birds were saying. And he understood that they were saying that he should escape. But he was afraid that maybe he's thinking that way because he's so desperate to escape. So he asked the guy, "What did the bird say?" And the guy confirmed it. So in fact, from the fact that Rabbi Ilish acted upon this, once he heard the confirmation from the guy, shows that Rabbi Ilish himself must have independently understood the words of the bird. So this is the famous Rabbi Ilish. So what happened? When Rabbi Ilish when Rabbi Ilish died, the children of Rabbi Ilish found a star that Rabbi Ilish was the entrepreneur in such an iska with an investor. And what was his share? What was Rabbi Ilish's share supposed to be? He was going to get 50-50 with no mention of any additional pay that Rabbi Ilish get for his work on behalf of the investor's part on the Chelik HaMilva. So the question is, what are they going to do over here? So Amar Rava said, Rav Ilish Gava Rabba. Rav Ilish was a lot of lightweight. He was a Gava Rabba, like we just saw. The Isur Linchi have a suffer. He surely would never put the investor into a situation where he's being this service. He would never do that. So there must have been some other arrangement. Therefore, this is what the star must mean. Manavsha. It said Palga Ba'agar and Palga Ba'havsha, but it wasn't one thing. It was a choice, it was an option. It was E Palga Ba'agar if Rav Illich was only going to get half of the profit, then trade tilts of a then the entrepreneur, then the investor accepted upon himself to accept 2/3 of the loss. So that still puts Rav Illich at an advantage, and it's that advantage that would be considered his pay towards operating the Chelek HaMilva. Now, before we turn the daf, there's a very big catch here that the Rashba asks. Why is it that we say Rav Illich loy Sofi? He wouldn't have been machshel the malva, the investor, with ribbis. What about him himself? Why doesn't it say Rav Illich wouldn't pay ribbis as a loiva? What is loy Sofi? So the Rishonim being arrived from here that we learned that the malva gets a lav and the loiva gets a lav and the shlichim get a lav and the Arav gets a lav and the Edom get a lav. That's only by ribbis ksutza, by ribbis deraisa. But by ribbis derabanan, which this is, we're discussing ribbis derabanan, there's no isser whatsoever on the loiva. The only isser involved is only on the malva. And that's why the Gemara uses a lotion of loy safi, because it's only a shaila of whether or not he is being machshel. It's only a shaila of whether or not he's being machshel the malva. But he's definitely not going to be over himself for having paid his ribs. Okay, let's turn over onto today's daf, Samach Tefs Amid Aleph. Zok the Gemara weiter, or Ipalga behafted Trey Tilson Ba'ager. If Rav Illich would have had to accept 50% of any losses from this investment, then he would have received 2/3 of the profit. In other words, there was a little bit of an advantage for Rav Illich here, which would cover the cost that he is working on behalf of the Baal Apikot. Rav Kahana, Zok Rav Kahana. I said this over to Rav Zvid Minahardo, and Amrli told me, you don't have to say all this Torah. That maybe he had a special arrangement. Dilma Rav Illich Toivel Imay B'Tzirava. We just said that we paskined like Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the smallest benefit that the operator receives from the investor is enough. So maybe Rav Illich dipped his challah into the herring juice of the investor. Maybe he dipped his chicken into the ketchup of the investor. And as we learned in Amar Aleph, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's adequate to pay. V'Amar Rab Nachman, halach Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Lei, Rav Kahana says, I don't think you know what Rab Nachman said. Rab Nachman didn't say halacha is paskin like all these things. So Zok Gemara, Amar Lei, lav hilchas ha'itmar. He didn't say that the halacha is like that. Eloshita itmar. All he meant to say is that they all seem to hold of the same halacha, that with a minor payment, it will be enough to alleviate the concern of ribbis. But that the halacha is like that you could be silent on that, he never said that. And I'll prove it to you. Hachinami mistaver. If you're going to say that he's actually paskening like them, why did he say 3 times? Halacha Rabbi Yehuda, halacha Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda, halacha Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. That's not what he should have said. All he should have said was, halacha each time. All he should have said is lema halacha Rabbi Yehuda to make a mikulu. He should have just said halacha like Rabbi Yehuda, who says if he merely casually let you dip your challah into his juice, into his tzir, that will be enough. That's the least possible benefit. And if he passed like Rabbi Yehuda, we would know that he's passing like everybody. But the fact that Rabbi Nachman listed off each one individually shows that he's not passing like them. He's just trying to say that they all share the same shita, but avada la'alocha, you require greater payment to this entrepreneur. Zok to Gemara weiter. Amarav. Moiser shlish b'scharcha harei mutter. Zok Rashi. Hasham egel lemechza b'scharu v'hefset. So an owner gives a shepherd an egel, a calf, and we're going to split the gains and the losses. And he told him, Mashiyavi Yoser al Shlish Damav Shel Akshav Toil B'Schorcha V'Choil Hashar Nachlik B'Shava. So he said, if it improves more than 30%, that's going to be your pay, and the rest will split. Meaning, he didn't give him actual pay. He told him the option that if the investment does exceptionally well, you'll get all of that. That should be the pay. So Amarav, Moiser Shlish B'Scharcha Hareza Mutter. Anything where this investment will gain over 30% is yours exclusively. That's considered a good pay towards this entrepreneur. Shmuel Omar, Loi Motza, Moiser Shlish, Yelech, Leveise Rekam. Are you telling me that if the investment doesn't do uber well, so now this entrepreneur is not going to get anything? Amar Shmuel, dinner. You have to set aside a dinner for his payment. V'savar Rav ein dinner. Rav says you don't do that. Amar Rav, reish egla lepatuma. Rav said that a makabel egel lefatma lemechtzis. If someone again gives an animal to a shepherd and says we're going to split it 50-50, Haroish Yitail Kuloi Lechelkoi Bischaramoloi Umizainoi Vashash Chok. The entrepreneur gets to keep the head of this animal. My love. What did Rav mean when he said this? The Amalei Moiser Shlish B'Scharcha, and what is he giving? He's giving the head. So Rashi Vashmin on Rav is telling us the Leka Moiser Shlish Nishkal Reish Egla. So you see, even Rav agrees that there has to be some guaranteed payment towards the entrepreneur, and if the animal doesn't produce more than 30%, the entrepreneur will still at least get the head of the animal, which also has some value. He said you can get one or the other, and you can decide which one you want. And therefore, you don't have a right that it has to be a specified guaranteed payment. Or you could say, mutter. When did Rav say that it's mutter? It's speaking where anyway the entrepreneur has his own animal, and therefore he's not doing any extra work. Why? The Amri Inchi Gavala the same work that you would have to do to service one animal, the animal that you have anyway, that work will also satisfy working for multiple oxen. And therefore, there's no extra Torah. As Rashi says, but Oiz Torah, Shatam Megabel Subin Usoirin, Lefnei Shar Echad, Ati Yochel Legabo, Lefnei Shnayim, it's not much extra work. So therefore, the Moiser Shlish will be enough. Rabbi Elazar Magrunya, Mefatim, Mezovin Behema, he bought an animal, and he gave it to an Uris, again, where they would share the profit and loss of the animal. Mefatim le, v'yoyev le reisha v'agre. He would give him the head as his pay for dealing with the chelik hapikot. V'yoyev palgo rafcha. The Yoyev Palga Ravcha, and he also gave him half of the profit. Amalei Devisu. So the wife of the shepherd said, "Listen, what are you getting as pay for your work on his half? You're getting the head. why don't you also put money into the deal? Put money into the next deal. Then you're a shutuf. If you're a shutuf, you'll probably be entitled to even more, to even the tail. Alisa. Don't just be the sweat equity man. You have money. Put money into the deal. Put skin in the game, and then you'll have a much greater benefit because then you'll be able to even get the tail. So he said, good. Amarle, he said, Ta niflage laresha. After, in the next deal, where this shepherd put money in, he was all excited that he's going to get, like his wife told him, side the head and side the tail. If it's heads, I win. If it's tails, you lose. He thought he benefits on both sides of the coin. And what did Rebbe Lozer tell his shepherd? Now I'm not even giving you the head. We're splitting the head. I'm not giving you anything. So the entrepreneur, the shepherd, was so disappointed. I thought I was going to do better because I'm your shutuf, and I'm doing worse. I'm not even going to get the head. So Rebbe Lozer said, of course not. Until now, in our last deal where I gave you the head exclusively, that's because I was the only investor. It was my money, and I had to avoid ribbis. If I wouldn't give you more than 50% of the benefit, Mexican ribbis, it would look like ribbis. But Hashta, now that you're a partner, it's 50-50 down the line. My comrade. So what are you going to tell me? You're putting in more work than I am? You know how it goes when you take on the partner. You need to know that sometimes you're going to be doing most of the work. That's just how it goes. Amri Inchi the Velt says, Stamarisi li Mari Araka Mashabit Nafshe La Suya La An Oris usually is going to do extra work and go the extra mile because he wants to provide good customer service. And if he does that, then he's hoping that the owner of the animal will actually sponsor and bring food, which will help the shepherd do his job better and not have to lay up money. So at the end of the day, now that you're my partner, I don't have to give you any benefit at all. That's just the way it goes. Sometimes you got to work harder. So the wife who gave the shepherd an agent to become a partner actually hurt him because he would have been better off just being the entrepreneur, and then he would have been entitled to the extra bit to avoid the problem of ribbis. The owner gives an animal to a shepherd, and we're going to split the profits. At what point can we say, okay, now it's time to sell? Right? Often people buy an investment together, and the investment goes up a little bit. Some of the investors want to sell and cash out. Some of the investors want to hold on for greater profit. So at what point do you sell? And we're going to soon see that there's something called the law of diminishing returns. The first bit of growth that the animal has, that comes with the least amount of work on behalf of the shepherd with the maximum benefit. But as it continues to grow older, the animal requires a lot more care. So the investor is still benefiting, it's still going up, but the entrepreneur is not so interested in continuing this investment because it's costing him too much work. So at what point, if they didn't specifically make up amongst them when they're going to liquidate this investment, at what point does the shepherd have a right to liquidate the investment? So Zog to Gemara. If we're speaking about mules, 18 months. The guide if we're talking about smaller animals, 24 months. What if one of the partners want to terminate the partnership earlier and liquidate? The investor can tell the shepherd, no, you got to keep on working on these animals. This investment has not matured yet. Clearly, every additional year that the entrepreneur, the shepherd's working on it, is much harder because the animals grow older. Because the the teeth are light. So Zokt Rashi. The sun is in my eyes. 1 second. Now I can see again. Zokt Rashi at Motzachai v'tap v'vladois shafim nachlokim. I'm sorry. I missed out this important thing. The animal gave birth to children. So these little babies, I'm sorry, I didn't get up to that. I'm up to El Avicha 89 Tipula, Shoshana Zula, Tipula, Shoshana Achers. Because it's much harder as it gets older. Okay, Zoktumar Viter. I believe I skipped a line, and that's why I got mixed up. So the original animals, as they get older and older, the work gets harder. Tanya, Hashem Bem L'Chaveiroi at Moshe Chai V'Tapel V'Vlodes. The Evetz started paying off. It produced vlodos. So could they sell the vlodos as soon as the vlodos are born, or do we say we have to wait till the vlodos grow up a little bit and are a little bit more valuable? So Zoktumar B'Daka Lamejoim. If it's a Be'emadaka, it's 30 days. V'Gasa Nun Yoim 50 days. By a daka, it's 3 months, not 30 days. Because it's much harder to take care of these little animals. They need more attention. Since their teeth are very weak and they need their mother, so it's much harder to deal with them. And they need extra care, so you have to keep them for 3 months. After that, so let's stop a second. The original investment, which we split it 50-50, the shepherd gets 50%, the owner gets 50%, that's only mechayiv the shepherd to watch the animal for 30 days or 50 days or 3 months, depending on the different shitas. What if we reach that point and they haven't liquidated the animal, they haven't sold off these little children, these little baby animals, and the shepherds continuing to watch them? That's not part of the original deal. The original deal was only mechayvim to take care of the animals up until this point and not further. So mikana laba, the animals remaining by the shepherd, we look at it like it's a brand new investment, and they're putting it into an investment again. So these animals are owned 50% by the shepherd, 50% by the investor. Now that they're being reinvested, so to speak, and they're continuing to stay by the shepherd, now even the owner's part now is 50% of the profit's going to go to the shepherd. So in essence, the shepherd's now going to have the profit of 3/4 of these children, because even the half that's already established to have been belonging to the investor, it now is being reinvested because the shepherd is continuing to watch it. So therefore, Metzia Shaloi, the Chatzi Metzia B'Shel Chavera, he's also going to get. Also the Kamei Abaye. So he came to Abaye. Amalei, he told him, Man Pluglach. Abaye said, who is going to split that up for you? So Rashi, Mi Sham Oisa, who is going to make that assessment? Shem Eloini Shumas Yafa. Maybe it's not going to be split evenly. So how could you just assume how much everything is going to go to? V'oid Makoim Shinohagu Lagadalu. It's a place where it was the minig, where the shepherd would continue to raise the animals until they're grown. The Tanana we learned Makom Shinohagu Lagadil Yagdilu. So therefore, Abaye said that you don't say, Menashe Bar Gada, he took 50% of he posted that the shepherd could take 50% of even the owner's part. Abaye said absolutely not. Talk to Gemara. Hanu Trei Kusoi. There were 2 Kusoi, and this doesn't mean that they were Goyim, they were Yidden from the city of Kusoi. The Ovid Iska Bahadadadi. They did an Iska. So it was going to be Chatzi Mil, Chatzi Bikot. And what happened? Ozul chad minayu, polik zuze, below dati the chavre. One of the two wanted out of the investment. He liquidated. He took half of his money, and the other partner was very unhappy about it, so he took him to the entire. Also, lokamei, the Rav Papa. So he was taken to the entire Rav Papa. Omer lay, Rav Papa said, "I don't understand. My nafkamina. What's the difference?" Hachi Omer Rav Nachman Zuzi Kaman the Pligida. There was no. It wasn't merchandise that was liquidated. It was cash. So it's cash, a big deal. So he took 50% of the cash. Cash, cash doesn't need any special type of assessment. Cash is cash. He took half. So therefore, too bad for you. You can't stop him from having liquidated. What happened? Lashana, the next year, these two people got together again. Zavin Chamra Badadad. They bought wine. And the other partner thought to himself, last year he liquidated the cash and he didn't ask me, and Rav Nachman told me too bad for me. This year I'm going to liquidate the wine because I want to liquidate the wine, and too bad for my partner. So come here to the this time his friend took him to Rav Papa. I took him to Rav Papa. And Rav Papa told him you had no right to split it up. Man plugluck. Who told you have a right to split it up by yourself? Maybe you didn't split it evenly. Maybe you took the better wine, he took the worse wine. You had no right to do that. So here this partner says, you got something against me. Because when I split it up, you didn't like it. And when he split it up, you told me too bad. So he wasn't so happy with her papa. I'm late. He told her papa, Kakazina, the boss are the dekas. You're coming at me. You're coming after me. You're always going against me. Omar Papa, her papa said, no, sir. Let me explain to you why my piske halacha are justified. Let's turn on to Amid Base. Normally, I'm not going to explain myself to you, but since this really looks bad, you think I'm out to get you, and in both cases I pass it against you, I'm going to tell you what happened. Zuzei mishakel money mishakel tavi vishavik kasri. When you're splitting up money, is it possible for you to take good money and give him bad money? Money is money, and therefore we don't have a concern as to how you split it up. But chamra, when you're splitting up wine, kul almayadi, everyone knows that he could boss him, he could lay boss him. Not all wine is perfectly the same, and you need to, if you're going to split up the wine that you own together, it has to be done under the supervision of somebody to ensure that it was split even. With money, you don't have that concern. So last year, when I said he had a right to split without you, that's because he split up in cash. There, we don't have a concern that it wouldn't be split properly, wouldn't be split fairly. But this year, you split up wine. Wine needs some type of supervision to make sure it was split up properly. Kufa Zakti. Amram Nachman. Susie, command of Plida. Money doesn't need any special assessment. It's always perceived as if it's split. Hanamili, that's with Tavi, Vitavi, Takuli, Vitakuli. That's if it's all the same type of money. However, but if there was different types of coins, some were better, some were worse, even Rav Nachman wouldn't say that. Hama Habamuker Susi Pshita. Still have a couple of minutes. So Prashi Muker Susi Pshita Liyoiva. What he would do is he would lend money out, but he wouldn't say it's a loan. He would say I'm renting you money. The Rashi Beloshan Skiris, Veloibes Loshna Avala. What did he say? I'm renting you my money. Zuz Hayoim Bepashat. One Zuz, every day I'm charging rental for the use of my Zuz. I'm charging a Pashat, which was a small copper coin. Dainu Zuz Medina. Dainu Zuz Medina, Dainu Shmini Shibutzur. So that's what he charged. So what happened? That's not really so appropriate. So he charged Zuzi Pipshita B'Yoyim. Kalu Zuzi D'Rabchama. He lost all of his money, and Raj says it was a punishment because he was Malva Baribis. He tried to call it a rental, but that's not really what it was, and therefore he lost his money. So Zok to Gemara, my shnoi mimara. The Reb Chama, sorry, Kalu Zuzah Reb Chama. Who's over my shnoi mimara? Reb Chama said, what's the difference if I'm renting out money or if I'm renting out my axe, or if I'm renting out a tool? Below, there's a massive difference. Mara Hadrabena. A spirits is when I give you an object and you give me back that same object. V'yadeya pafse, and you know if it got damaged or didn't get damaged. Masha'enkein, Zuzi lo Hadrabenai. Money, you don't know. When I give you money, I'm not renting you the money that you should put it in your display case and look at it. I'm lending you money to spend. It's middle no. That's not a rental. You can't rent money. Money is automatically something that's called a halva, and it's subject to the rules of ribis. An object that you rent, you could see if it's degraded or not. Money, I lend you money, and you give me money, and therefore that's considered ribis. Amar Rava said, Shari leila inish l'meimer leila chavre. Person is allowed to tell his friend, Heilich dalet zuzi, v'uspe leplanya zuzi. I'm allowed to tell somebody, Malva, I want you to do me a favor and lend money to this loiva. I'll give you a gift if you do that. If you lend my friend $100, I'll give you a gift of $5. So here you have the Malva's receiving ribis, but he's not receiving the ribis from the loiva. That's allowed. Why? Ribis is only usher if it's paid from the loiva to the Malva. Here, a third party is paying the Malva. That's not what ribis is. On the flip side, a loiva wants to borrow money, he can go to his friend and say, friend, Yankel, I know has money, but he'd never lend me money if I ask him. Do me a favor, convince Yankel to lend me money, and I'm going to give you a gift of $5. So here you have the loiva that's paying ribis, yet the Malva isn't receiving it. Once again, Rava says that's mutter. Why? My timer, Sky Amira Kashakal. He's just taking payment for speaking on behalf of the loiva, but there's no ribis over here.
Yosy?
Yes.
So that's like a broker's fee. Like any broker can be a broker without.
That's exactly what it is. It's like a broker, and a broker is a lot of charge. A mortgage broker is a lot of charge.
Okay, so there's no shiloh of ribis with the broker.
That's right. There's no shiloh of ribis, even though the loiva is paying, and that's exactly what Rava is saying. It's not about the fact that it's costing the loiva more.
Is that how we pass it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is nice, of course. Kihod Abba bar More der Papa have a shakel ugna dekira mikiroi. What he would do is he would take chalois handitchos bekalim tanim agulim kagalim. He took chalois that were made in small little kalim. V'amalei lavua, and he said, take this little thing. Everyone knows that Rav Papa was rich. So Abba Bar Mori, the child of Rav Papa, someone paid the child of Rav Papa money or gifts to get him to speak to Rav Papa to lend the money. And he did it. Your son is eating ribis because he's charging money to people to buy influence by his father. Does that sound familiar? Amalahu, Rav Papa said there's no problem with that. Kol ki hai rabisa nechel. This ribis that you're describing, where my son is getting paid because he's convincing me to lend somebody money, I have no problem with that. Lo yasra Torah el ribis haba miloy v'lamalva. The only type of ribis that the Torah outlaws is money that's being paid from the loiva to the malva. Haka schar amira kashaka. All my son is charging for influence. Vishari, that's allowed. The Torah only disallows the payment from a malva from a loiva to a malva for giving him a loan. Okay, we'll stop here, and Bez Hashem we will be mamshech tomorrow, and tomorrow Bez Hashem I will be there in person.
I was safe rest of the drive.
Thank you we're on the QEW. It's getting stop and go. We're I think by Mississauga Road, so we're getting there. Hopefully, I'll still make it to Shackles.
Uh,
Okay, be very well. Have a wonderful day.